Whom did you choose as your references, and why?
I selected a former boss, a peer, and a customer as references to demonstrate that I'm a pretty well-rounded person and get along with all the important work associates in my life.
The interviewer is looking for a logical mix of people without any obvious omissions. For example, a former salesperson would do well to include a former salesperson as a reference. Describe what you'd expect each of your references to say. Include a diverse group, senior to junior, an associate from work, an old professor from college. Can we call all of your references?
I'd prefer that you call my current boss only after you've made me a firm offer of employment, and I've had a chance to tell her myself that I'm changing jobs. Then, of course, I understand your need to verify that my application was accurate.
This is a question designed to protect you. If your current employer doesn't know you're looking for a new job, as is most often the case, you can request that the interviewer contact your current employer only after you've accepted a position and given your notice to your current employer. Tell me what you've learned from a recent book.
I enjoy reading biographies, especially of people who lived in a different era. I recently read Churchill's biography, which taught me a lot about the value of leadership and good PR under times of stress.
The interviewer wants to know if the candidate has interests in common with others at the company. Do you use your spare time as a productive yet relaxing way to learn new things? What are you naturally inquisitive about? Tell me about a work group you really enjoyed.
My group in our new product launch department really meshed. When one of us was approaching the final day before a launch, we all rolled up our sleeves and helped put press packets together or whatever else was the last item to be shipped to the sales force. Although it was an administrative task, it had to be done, and it was a good time for us all to speculate on the success of the product and any major concerns.
This question is a combination of describe your working relationship with your colleagues and did your customers or clients enjoy working with you? Demonstrate your ability to work well with others and to establish solid, ongoing working relationships. Are you most productive working alone or in a group?
I need some private time for planning, but otherwise I like the activity and noise of people around me and the ability to share ideas. I think most writers need reinforcement because we all get writer's block occasionally.
The interviewer is looking for someone who can work in an environment without the environment disrupting the candidate's preferred way of getting work done. Be honest, but communicate that you're a flexible and reasonably adaptive employee. Tell me about a situation in which it was difficult to remain objective.
I've researched the new online source for our library, and my manager decided to pull funding at the last minute. It was frustrating for me, because I'd gotten excited about the product, liked the vendor, and he even told some people to count on having the resource. But I understand the need to revise budgets, and the matter was out of my control at the time.
The obvious answer here is a time when you've worked long hours on a project only to have the project canceled. Or perhaps you found that the project was less strategically sound than you'd hoped. Were you able to readjust your thinking and do what was best in the long run? Number 8, management style and interpersonal skills. Tell me about an effective manager, supervisor, or other person in a leading role you've known.
The best professor I ever had always reviewed the most important points from our last class before he moved on to new material. He also watched our faces carefully and repeated information whenever he saw a blank stare. Sometimes he would just ask for feedback by saying, "What are you having difficulty with?" He never assumed too much or made us feel dumb for not grasping a concept quickly.
Talk about a supervisor's management style and interpersonal skills. Focus on the positive. How the person worked rather than what type of work he or she did. How was the person able to accomplish so much and win your support? Describe your personal management style.
I repeat what someone has told me, but I reorganize the information in a way that helps them see the problem or answer themselves. Sometimes I just ask questions until they see a clear solution. I learned this from watching a friend who's a successful trial lawyer.
Talk about your management style and interpersonal skills with peer groups and leaders, and describe how you've incorporated a habit from a leader you admire. What type of people do you work with most effectively?
I tend to work well with people who are confident and straightforward. It's more difficult for me to be around timid people because I move quickly and am decisive.
Focus on the positive here. What type of boss, employee, and colleague would you be? Keep in mind that the interviewer wants to find out how well you would fit in with the other personalities in the company, not how well the other personalities in the company would suit you. What are some of the things your supervisor did that you disliked?
The only thing I really don't like is to get feedback in front of others. I want to hear good or bad feedback in private, so that I have time to think and react to the issue without other distractions. I believe that's the fair way to improve learning or to change future behavior.
Try to describe a positive learning experience from a difficult situation, avoiding personal criticism of an ex-boss or manager, if possible. How do you organize and plan for major projects?
I love to brainstorm a best, worst, and most likely scenario. Then I set a timetable that's realistic. What I usually find is that some combination of my best and worst cases evolves. I can adjust my schedule easily as these things unfold because I've already visualized what could happen and how I'd react.
Give the interviewer a good idea of your general approach to mastering complex tasks. You may wish to include here how you decide on time frames, set deadlines, determine priorities, delegate tasks, and decide what to do for yourself. Describe a time when you've worked under intense pressure.
I had to complete an end-of-quarter report once while I was on the road for 2 consecutive weeks. The amount of telephoning back and forth was incredible because I couldn't bring my office files with me. Luckily, I had a great secretary and a logical filing system, so we located everything we needed.
A good idea when answering a question like this is to concentrate on your time management skills. Give a specific example with enough detail to communicate both the intensity of the situation and the ease with which you handled it. How do you manage your time on a typical day?
I've always given priority to work with established clients because they offer a better risk-return value. The last thing I do is general correspondence, especially internal correspondence, which I take care of at the end of the day or week.
Here the interviewer wants evidence that the candidate can juggle priorities as necessary based on the work team, departmental adjustments, and nature of the tasks. He or she will also want to be sure that you don't give priority to fun work and avoid dull, necessary routines that are important in the long run. Tell me about a time when you had to defend an idea to your boss.
Once I had to convince my boss to change PR firms. I really believed that our interests on the West Coast weren't being met by our Chicago-based firm. I was able to convince him after showing him the demographic shift in our customer base.
This is the flip side of describe a time when you acted on someone's suggestion. Can you give advice constructively and get someone to understand your side? Give a specific example. Have you ever felt defensive around your boss or peers?
I had to explain once why I thought a black and white brochure was more suitable for the content of an insurance product brochure. No one in my office liked the idea initially, because we were all used to color brochures, and everybody felt that black and white looked cheap. Eventually, I convinced them that a more subtle approach would work better to present information about a difficult topic. Death benefits.
Pick a specific example of a time when you had to defend an idea. Avoid any discussion of personality clashes, feelings of resentment, or heated exchanges? How did you get others to see your view of things? What was the outcome? Be sure to end on a positive note. Have you patterned your management style after someone in particular?
I've emulated my first boss in many ways. I keep a file for each member of my staff on my desk. They can throw notes, ideas, work they want me to review, or anything else in there. And I do the same with material I have for them. It's an extra form of communication whenever one of us gets an idea. Then, when we sit down to talk, the issues we need to cover are in one place, at our fingertips.
Your answer should describe someone you've known personally, a boss who motivated you in a positive way to achieve beyond your own goals. Be specific about how he or she accomplished this. Describe a leader you admire.
I've always admired the president of my company. He's visible. He doesn't want a special parking place or table in the cafeteria. And he gives you the feeling that he's just another member of the team.
Give personal or popular examples of leaders you believe are effective. Why do you believe those people are able to accomplish so much? What tricks have you learned from the leaders you admire? What personal characteristics add to your effectiveness?
I always stay in touch with my network. If I see an article that might be of interest to someone I know, I clip it and send it to that person. Then, when I need help and make a phone call to that person, the phone call gets returned promptly.
Talk about what makes your personal style unique and effective. For example, how are you able to get cooperation from others? What specific skills and traits help you get results, and why? Number 9. Problem-solving ability. Describe a situation in which you've applied technical skills to solve a problem.
One of our components kept arriving at distribution points with stress cracks. My materials science background helped me to diagnose the problem as one of storage temperature during shipping. Although our equipment was safely stored at both end points, it had been sitting in an unair-conditioned cargo space for up to 30 hours before reaching its destination. We're now using a different shipping company, and we've improved our labeling on large shipments to reflect the user's warning about temperature extremes.
Quickly define the problem for the interviewer, then focus on how your skills enabled you to tackle it. What actions did you take, and what was the outcome? How do you usually go about solving a problem?
When I need to solve a problem, I generally start by writing down as many ideas as I can think of about possible causes. Next, I look for relationships among causes so I can group together symptoms of bigger problems. Usually, after I study these groups of problems, the real cause becomes readily apparent.
The interviewer will want to hear the logic you use to solve problems as well as the outcomes you're able to achieve. Are you decisive? How do you narrow the options and make decisions? What do people say about your reasoning skills? What examples would they cite of your effective decision-making? How do you measure the success of your work?
I measure reactions of customers. When my customers call me with a referral, I know they're happy. And I have to say that repeat business to me is more satisfying than winning a new account. People have a tendency to try a new company because of that company's reputation or product. But they come back because of the relationship they've learned to trust.
What results or evidence do you need to evaluate the success of your work? What types of feedback or reward systems are important to you? The reviewer will want to establish that these needs can be satisfied in the job. How practical or pragmatic are you?
I can usually pick up on an underlying problem, even if it's not too obvious. I recall an investment banker who visited our real estate finance class and asked us what might cause the Tokyo investment community a problem in attracting local investment dollars. A number of finance MBAs in the class started trying to think of some complicated set of reasons. I decided it would have to do with getting out of a bad market quickly, and that a non-liquid investment would create problems. I said investors would be unsettled if the primary investment is local real estate and inflation has caused the paper value to exaggerate the real street value. As it ended up, that was the answer he wanted.
Give the interviewer an example of some practical or sensible approach you've used to solve a problem. When was a simple solution the best solution? Had others overlooked the obvious? In this example, you'll want to show off your common sense skills rather than your academic skills. How do you balance your reliance on facts with your reliance on intuition?
Facts are important, but often neglect point-in-time influences, especially with market research. One survey that I was uncomfortable with involved pricing data that was collected just after a major presidential election. The timing caused me to doubt that consumers would really spend as much as the survey indicated they would for new cars. So we ended up holding on to the last quarter's pricing structure. We sold more cars while, as interest rates climbed, some of our competitors had expensive inventory carryover.
Describe a specific time when your intuition helped you solve a problem that might have been handled badly if you'd followed the facts or standard procedure. Demonstrate an ability to think outside of the box. What was your greatest problem in your last job?
I had to get long-time employees with few or no computer skills to embrace a new email system. I started by explaining the need for less paper in everyone's job. Then I decided to create a temporary email account with one daily riddle on the system. Everyone who responded correctly got their name put in a weekly drawing. Each week, for 1 month, a person from the drawing got dinner for 4 at a nice local restaurant. This approach went over well as a device to get people to use the system.
The interviewer wants to hear about a problem area the candidate improved in his or her last job. If you're asked this question, don't complain without showing solutions. Demonstrate an ability to offer solutions, not merely to point out problems. Tell me about a problem that you failed to anticipate.
My boss asked me to solve an ongoing scheduling problem. I failed to realize that the person who had lived with the problem would see me as an antagonist. By the time I realized it, I'd already done some of the groundwork. If I'd started by asking for the person's opinion, I would have been able to get him on my side early on.
This question forces you to be humble but gives you an opportunity to relate an incident from which you learned an important lesson. What warning signs should you have seen? How has your judgment improved as a result of this experience? Have you ever resolved a long-standing problem?
We used to batch our guests' personal faxes, sometimes as many as 10 outgoing fax requests per hour, to put less strain on our administrative staff. We had guests who weren't happy about that. I arranged a lease deal on an outgoing fax machine for guest self-serve access. This freed up more time for staff, and they were able to maintain control of incoming faxes, protecting incoming information until they could locate the appropriate guest in person.
Tell the interviewer about a problem you championed within a work setting or other organization. How did you overcome or circumvent the obstacles? What were the results? What motivated you to tackle the problem to begin with? Describe a time when you found it necessary to make an unpopular decision.
I had to start a policy of no food in work areas, including private offices, because the production workers were unhappy with the inequity. For safety reasons, workers couldn't have food anywhere near expensive equipment. Now it's forgotten, but at the time, a number of supervisors were angry at me. I thought the matter was important, and that the solution was consistent with other new policies, like doing away with assigned parking spaces for high-level employees. So far, we've been progressive enough to keep unions out of our company.
Sometimes an important long-term result is achieved only with short-term sacrifices. This question measures the candidate's ability to make important value judgments with long-term results. Be sure to give a specific example if you're asked a question like this. Tell me about a time when there was no rule or precedent to help you attack a problem.
I was the first employee in a newly created position. I spent the first week developing an understanding of the history that had led to creation of the position. Only then did a method for setting priorities on the job become clear.
Can you operate without structure? Describe your problem-solving process, especially the steps you took and measures you established in a particularly trying situation. Demonstrate confidence and the willingness to take on new challenges. Describe an opportunity in which you felt the risks far outweighed the rewards.
At one point, we had an opportunity to purchase conveyor equipment at 30 cents on the dollar from a company that had dissolved. Although we anticipated an overhaul of our distribution facility 5 years down the road, I felt it was too far into the future to spend money only to have idle capacity for a 5-year period. If market conditions had shown more promise for new sales in the initial 2-year period, I would have gone ahead with it.
The interviewer wants to see that the candidate has an interest in taking reasonable risks without inclining toward foolishness. Demonstrate with an example your logic for deciding against some plan. How is the outcome preferable to what might have happened? Number 10. Accomplishments. Tell me about a major accomplishment.
I'm really proud of the business I obtained with XYZ Wholesale Club. I believe that these types of companies will continue to thrive in the next few years.
Offer proof of your accomplishments using real examples. Don't give long descriptions of situations. Focus your answer on the actions you took and the positive results you obtained. The interviewer will want to know what you can contribute to the company. Talk about a contribution you've made to a team.
I helped my last team put together more cohesive presentations for a client. I think our practice and preparation made a statement about how committed we would be to the details of the system installation. In the end, we landed the account.
Tell the interviewer about your initiative within a team. Offer proof, using specific examples, that you delivered more than the team expected and that the team would complement your contributions to the group's efforts. What special role did you play? Tell me about an organization outside of work that's benefited from your participation.
I've been involved in junior achievement. I was an economics undergrad, and I like seeing the high school kids get excited about what they read in the paper and about how economics affects their lives.
Discuss in some detail your initiative with something you volunteered for, such as working for a charitable organization. In other words, what things are important motivators for you? Could your employer benefit from these interests in some way? What kind of corporate citizen are you? Give me an example of a time you delivered more than what was expected.
In my last job, my boss asked me to take over all the uncollected accounts. I was able to recover 20% more than his goal. I convinced people that I was willing to work out an affordable schedule based on their needs. And I did this by asking about their problems. Once they vented, they would usually listen to me.
Give an example of a time when you truly excelled at a given task. Chances are you're likely to repeat similar results in your new position. In other words, give the interviewer an indication of the situations you might handle especially well if you were hired. What accomplishment is your greatest source of pride?
I'm proud of how we turned a profit at our hospital in the first year under private management. Now that goal's been accomplished, and I'm ready to do the same for another hospital. That's why consulting within the industry appeals to me so much.
Your answer will hint at the kinds of projects you'd like to do in the future. Focus on goals related specifically to the job you're applying for. The interviewer will want to know how your past initiative and accomplishments can translate to success for his or her company. What accomplishment was the most difficult for you to achieve?
I found it intimidating to work with the marketing research staff when I started my job, mostly because I hadn't done well in statistics or market research during college. What I decided to do was enroll in an executive seminar on market research, which really boosted my confidence. Now I don't feel at a disadvantage when I meet with the research group, and I know what questions to ask to get information that's meaningful to me.
Describe something you've accomplished despite obstacles, lack of training, or inadequate experience. This question allows you to talk about overcoming a weakness. Tell me about a time you saved money for an employer or an organization.
I was able to eliminate a middleman we'd worked with for years in getting our employee magazine printed. We planned the issues, collected research, wrote the articles, did most of the editing, and then handed the information to him, which he took to a designer and printer. After I managed this process twice, I decided to do the coordinating work myself. The additional time it cost me was 8 hours, but we saved a 10% markup, and even better, the issues now get completed faster and with greater accuracy.
Be specific and quantify your results when answering your question, but don't give long descriptions of situations. Offer proof using a clear, convincing example. Tell me about a person or group you had to work with to achieve something important.
My law school class really worked hard to improve the image of our school with employers. We put together our own promotional book, which we sent to law firms and alumni. The book presented a mock courtroom case in which other law schools filed a class action suit, arguing that the quality of the student body and teaching at our school had caused an erosion of interest in other law programs. They proved to the court that both teaching and student statistics clearly had led to positive placements for our graduates, which in turn killed the chances for students from other programs. The format of our brochure was so unusual that it got the attention of the major press, which served our purpose nicely.
Give an example that demonstrates your use of teamwork to produce a better result than you could have achieved by yourself. Acknowledge your contributions and those of your team members. Tell me about a need you fulfilled within a group or a committee.
I worked on the committee to review our company's policy on sick leave. One of our employees was abusing the system in order to gain vacation time. I served as the objective member of the group, having used virtually no sick leave in 5 years of employment. I ended up presenting an idea that the company's now considering, which is to allow up to 1 week of sick time to be voluntarily allocated to extra family leave time.
Tell the interviewer about your initiative in group projects. In teams, what roles do you usually play? Tell me about a quantifiable outcome of one of your efforts.
I reorganized inventory planning and was able to automate the inventory reorder function, which used to be a 40-hour process, and now takes only 3 hours.
Describe a specific accomplishment, the outcome of which produced a clear benefit. Offer proof, using real examples that you deliver more than what's expected. Did you exceed your expected outcome? How? Tell me about a project you completed ahead of schedule.
I was in charge of a new product rollout. In general, we completed each phase without a major setback, which was partially luck. But I also systematically called 2 days ahead of every deadline to check the status with all groups involved. I believe that made the difference. The launch took place 2 weeks ahead of plan, a significant period of time in our industry where shelf life for products is generally less than 1 year.
Focus here on how you set goals and schedules, measured results, and champion the outcome of a project. This question is aimed at your diligence in accomplishing tasks and assuming the project required group effort at your leadership skills. Number 11. Career aspirations. What are your long-term career plans?
My long-term career goals are to become known as an industry expert, and to have earned a respectable management position with responsibility for a major piece of the business. I'd like to think I'll have experience in many parts of the business over time.
It's reasonable to see ahead about 5 years, but probably no more, given the changing nature of businesses. Especially in high-tech fields, which change dramatically in a short time, it's impossible to project accurately how you might fit into a specific job. Therefore, focus on types of experiences, not job titles, that you hope to gain over time. Since this will be your first job, how do you know you'll like the career path?
Although it's true that I've never worked a job in your industry, I've talked to many friends and alums at my school who've been successful in your company. I always ask them the questions, what's the most frustrating thing about your job? And what's the most rewarding thing about your job? From the information I've gained, I'm confident that I'll be able to adapt quickly to your culture and will find the next few years rewarding based on my goals and values.
This can be a difficult question to answer convincingly, unless you've done a little bit of preparation. Discuss, for example, an internship or a conversation that's allowed you to assess the culture of the organization or to preview the work involved. Describe other people in the profession who have been mentors who have taught you about the field. Also point out why you're interested, how you learn more about the industry, and how you stay current with industry trends. Why is this job right for you at this time in your career?
This job would build on my extensive technical background both as a Navy communications officer and in the 2 software companies where I've worked. I believe I'm now ready to assume broader responsibilities as a project manager. I've demonstrated my ability to handle the responsibility for both a diverse team of programmers and engineers and for major capital budgets.
Describe the experiences you want to pursue that build on your current skills and interests. Be as specific as you can, based on what you know about the current or future direction of the position and the department. Demonstrate why this position fits with your personal career goals. How can you create job growth for yourself? What are your aspirations beyond this job?
Beyond this job as a marketing assistant, I see myself moving up through marketing analysis into brand management and eventually running a category. I'm aware that there are several skills I need to develop in the interval, and I believe with your continuing education program and my own motivation for self-improvement, I'll have those skills when the opportunities arise for greater responsibility. That's why I'm determined to learn from the ground up, starting as a marketing assistant.
Again, don't fall into the trap of specifying job titles. Stick to a natural progression you see as plausible. How should this job grow for the good of the organization? Then turn your attention once again to the job at hand. If you seem too interested in what lies beyond this job, the interviewer will fear that you won't stick around for long. What new challenges would you enjoy?
I've worked in the hospitality industry for over 8 years and have progressively worked in larger, more prestigious hotels. I've learned the food and beverage side of the business and the hotel management side, and now I believe I'm ready to be a convention or conference sales manager.
Describe the natural next step in your skill development based on what you've learned and enjoyed in your last job. What do you feel ready to tackle next? Be as specific as you can, considering what you know about the current or future direction of the position and department. If you could start all over again, what direction would your career take?
I have always enjoyed consumer sales as I've moved up in my career. Looking back, I wish I'd gotten a bit more experience in market research earlier in my career, because it's important to understand the types of quantitative models and technical research techniques that are now important for a regional sales manager to know.
The interviewer will want to see if your career path, including this job interview, is less than ideal for you. Be careful to show that your heart lies in this field, but offer other insights so that someone else following in your footsteps might quicken the learning curve, time frame, and so on. What achievements have eluded you?
I have achieved considerable success at the finance department of my company, a large corporation. I have worked in 2 different plants as the director of finance. I have worked in capital budgets at the corporate office and in the business planning area. Unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to work in the Treasury Department. Based on my graduate finance education and my several years' finance experience, I'm now convinced that I'm ready to handle this responsibility, and that it'll be the next step in my learning curve toward a top finance executive position.
Describe a responsibility you'd like but haven't yet earned. What do you feel ready to tackle next? Explain why you haven't had the opportunity to assume such a responsibility, but take care not to sound passive. Describe some continuing efforts to reach your goals. Ask yourself, would your current employer agree that you're ready? Have you progressed in your career as you expected?
My 6 years with a major gas company have included solid experience in price analysis, capital budgets, and financial planning. I now believe I'm ready to take on departmental responsibility for the entire finance function within a finance company.
Review the positive learning experiences from your past jobs and the next steps you're ready to take as a result, but also be realistic in admitting the areas where you need more experience. Honesty, without demonstrating either pessimism or unrealistic expectations, is important here. Tell me about your salary expectations.
I've become a little frustrated in the past year because the downturn in our industry has caused limited promotional opportunities. Based upon salary information published by our National Association, the market price for someone with my experience and educational background is in the broad range of $30,000 to $40,000 per year. Although I'm not certain how your salaries compare to the national norms, my feeling is that my value would certainly be in the upper half of this national range. I hope you'll share with me some of your salary ranges relative to the national norms.
A well-prepared candidate can effectively turn this question around. Ask for the company's salary range, then answer in general terms based on your qualifications in relation to the job requirements. Have you ever taken a position that didn't fit into your long-term plan?
Back in the late 80s, when Wall Street was booming, I was lured away with a high-paying offer in a firm that was trading commodities on the Asian market. Even though I had success in the job, I quickly realized that the work wasn't fulfilling or challenging enough to keep me happy. So, after 2 years, I jumped back into the corporate world as a controller for one of the metal plants of my corporation. I've since moved up in the finance area, and my long-term plans include staying in this industry and assuming greater responsibility in the area of financial planning and control.
The interviewer is trying to determine here how wisely the candidate can pick jobs to match his or her interests and aspirations. If you've been sidetracked by some job, you'll probably have to convince the recruiter that you're on the right track pursuing this position. Number 12. Personal interests and hobbies. Other than work, tell me about an activity you've remained interested in over several years.
I've been involved in Cancer Society fundraising ever since my grandmother died from the disease. In the back of my mind, I guess I'm hoping that the research can lead to findings in time to save the life of someone else in my family.
The interviewer is looking here for a history of commitment over time and consistency of interest. Do you sustain your hobbies over a period of time, or do you have a different hobby every year? Are your interests compatible with the job you're applying for? Would they be of value in any way to the company? What do you do in your spare time?
I really enjoy getting outside. I often go camping and hiking. I have learned a lot about different fabrics that are good for various weather conditions. That's why I'm so interested in your textile operations.
The interviewer wants evidence that you're well-rounded, not just one-dimensional. He or she is also looking for shared interests or common ground. You should always, in some way, relate your answer to the job description. What outside activities complement your work interests?
I've always enjoyed tennis. In many ways, it's a game of strategy and pacing. When something isn't working in the first set, You have to change your strategy for the second set. You also have to pace your energy in case you go to a third set, and constantly watch and read your opponent's reactions. I'm a gutsy tennis player. I go for the big points sometimes. But I'm careful with timing. That's the way I am at work, too.
The interviewer is interested to see if the candidate's personality is reflected in both work and outside activities. Your answer to this question will shed light on your personality and thus possibly on your compatibility with the job. How is your personality reflected in the kinds of activities you enjoy?
I love to cook and entertain. That's the salesman coming out in me. I love sharing experiences with people, and I'm very outgoing. I don't particularly enjoy being alone. I always feel as if I should be doing something.
Describe how your natural skills and values are reflected in various things you do, from work to leisure. What are your comfortable patterns of operating? For example, a detail, precise hobby reflects something different from a risk-oriented, aggressive sport. What kinds of leisure activities help you perform your work better?
I enjoy sitting outside during lunch and talking with students. It gives me a chance to get fresh air, but it also helps the students get comfortable with me. So they're more likely to seek my help when they need it.
The recruiter will want to know that you have an outlet to relax. Just about any hobby or leisure activity will help you perform more efficiently at work. But if you can tie the activity directly to job performance, so much the better. What do you do to relax?
I have a great family. Weekends are like a vacation for me. When I'm at work, I focus on work. But when I'm home on weekends, work really is far from my mind. One of the smartest things I did was to move 20 miles outside of town. Even the drive home is relaxing.
An admission that work is far from your mind when you're relaxing is not necessarily a bad thing. This candidate attractively reveals additional information about his character and at the same time lets the interviewer know that there is plenty of psychic energy stored for the workday. If you found yourself getting burned out, what would you do to revitalize your energy?
I don't allow myself to get involved in a routine to the point that I get burned out. I've always been the type of person who asks for new assignments so that I stay motivated and interested.
Are you disciplined enough to avoid burnout? When you're not being productive, do you recognize it? What do you do to cope with stress? Our company believes that employees should give time back to the community. How do you feel about it?
I believe that too. In my last job as manager, I told each of my employees that they could spend one Friday afternoon a month at a charity of their choice on company time, as long as they weren't all gone on the same Fridays. Ironically, productivity didn't decrease at all. They got more done in the morning. And I guess Friday afternoons weren't that productive to begin with. I've spent my afternoons with an adult reading program.
Describe a time you gave something to a community or an organization as a volunteer. Do you go above and beyond what's expected of you? Do you use your skills productively? Are you unselfish, a team player? Demonstrate how your personal interests make you productive even when you aren't being paid. What incentives other than a paycheck inspire you? If you had unlimited leisure time, how would you spend that time?
I don't think I could ever be happy with lots of spare time. I'd probably travel, learn another language, and spend more time with my 2 charities. I'd also take more courses in accounting.
In answering this question, demonstrate that you'd use your time to increase your skills or to give something back to the community or a good cause. When possible, choose an activity that's career or job-oriented. For example, if you're in marketing, say you'd get involved with junior achievement and teach young people about careers in business. Your answer should reflect your energy and capacity for work, as well as your natural curiosity. Don't say something like, "I don't know, I just like to relax." Describe how a sport or hobby taught you a lesson in teamwork or discipline.
My football coach from high school taught me always to watch out for the other guy. If you do, he'll cover you when you need him to. I've applied that principle in all my work groups, especially on the trading floor.
Talk about a time you had to use teamwork to get a desired result. Tell a specific story, then explain how the same skill or lesson has been used in your work. When you aren't at work, do you prefer to stick to a schedule, or do you prefer to be spontaneous? Why?
My workday is very structured because I'm generally in 4 or 5 meetings a day. On the weekends, I like to have a plan, but not necessarily a set schedule. That in itself is a relaxing change of pace for me, but I feel I'd be wasting time with no plan at all.
Be careful. Whichever answer you choose must be consistent with the job you're interviewing for. For example, since accounting is a profession that requires discipline and precision, your answer should reflect your natural inclination toward agendas, schedules, and precision. However, for a sales job, you'd probably want to show that you're prepared to wing it. This question is essentially about your personality, but it is also about your compatibility with the job. Describe a movie you've seen that really inspired you.
I loved one part of an otherwise depressing movie. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. In one scene, the nurse refuses to turn on the TV for the World Series. So, Jack Nicholson looks at the blank screen and starts narrating, as though the game were actually on. The other patients gather around him and follow the game. I thought that scene was an example of the power of visualization in making things happen.
Demonstrate that you can assimilate knowledge from a wide variety of sources, including books and movies. Tell the interviewer about a specific book or movie that taught you something. Discuss how and where you've applied that knowledge. Chapter 5. Zingers. One of the biggest fears that job candidates harbor about interviews is the unanticipated question for which they have no answer. To make matters worse, some recruiters may ask a question knowing full well that you can't possibly answer it. These types of questions are known as stress questions and are designed for their shock effect. Sometimes recruiters ask stress questions not because they enjoy seeing you squirm in your seat, but because they want to judge how well you might react to pressure or tension on the job. If you encounter a stress question, your best bet is to stay calm, diplomatic, and positive in your response. Don't get defensive or allow your confidence to be shaken, and try to answer the question to the best of your ability. If you simply can't answer the question, think about it for a few seconds. Then, with a confident smile and without apology, simply say, "I can't answer that question." Following are some of the most challenging questions you'll ever face. If you're able to answer these questions, you'll be prepared to handle just about anything the recruiter comes up with.